Hey, welcome back to Backlog Banter. Today, we're furthering our quest for the bestest. We're looking for the very best out of the best picture winners of all time. I'm Timo. I'm joined by Abram, Tanner, and Tucker. And today, we're going to be talking about the 1988 Best Picture winner, Rain Man. But before we get started, let's do a little recap of what happened last week in a surprising turn of events. The Godfather Part 2, 1974 Francis Ford Coppola film, got surprisingly low marks. We put it number 3, below Godfather Part 1 and Godfather Part 2, much to the
No,
dismay of Abram. We put it below
Parasite.
Parasite. I misspoke, sorry.
Yes, there you go.
Abram was upset about that, but we rule with the will of the majority with plenty of deliberation, but the votes still come in at the end. So this week, we're talking about Rain Man.
Yes.
Thoughts?
Yes.
Abram, got some thoughts on this. We tried to record this once before, got fucked up. There's a post credits here that'll kind of explain. But Abram's got some interesting thoughts.
Yeah, I have a very interesting relationship with this film. I found this film incredibly hard to watch personally. I am not autistic, but I do deal with pretty big mental issues that have informed a lot of my life and how I've gone about things and personal connections and such. So watching this film, I was hit by it in a very acute way. The relationship between Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise, I think, is really powerful. I think the entire film is really powerful, and I kind of found myself entranced by it for a lot of different reasons, completely noting that a lot of that is subjective with the baggage I bring into the film. But watching it, I found it to be a deeply affecting movie.
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting one. We've been on a hot streak of movies that are considered top of the line. I mean, Godfather, Godfather 2, Parasite. These are ones that I've, even though Parasite's much newer, are widely considered some of the top of the industry. And Rain Man, clearly there's some people who think that it's the top of the industry. It won Best Picture, but it really is not held on the pedestal that those other ones are. And it's a movie that I think doesn't get enough love. Tanner spent a long time during the movie kind of crapping on the fact that it won Best Picture.
Yeah.
But it's not a movie that I don't think I would have won Best Picture for, but I do have a lot of respect for it, and I actually do think it's a very good movie.
I think it's an interesting and conflicted movie because it was made in the 80s and because it's dealing with like developmental disabilities and portraying them, and you've got Tom Cruise's character who interacts in a very different way than you would with an autistic person nowadays. You would never dare do that if you had any 2 cents in your brain nowadays.
Yeah.
But it's just society and the way that we as a culture have like talk and think about these specific issues has moved on quite a lot from the way the movie portrayed them, I think. And science knows a lot more, and there's a lot of different stuff with it that I think really impacted at least my viewing of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think we're all sort of dancing around the same problems here. Is that the portrayal of autism, the high functioning autism by Dustin Hoffman, maybe doesn't live up to today's standards. But setting that aside, I do think this is a good movie. I think, setting aside the problematic aspects of his performance, I think Dustin Hoffman does well. Tom Cruise does well. The relationship is well written, well acted for the most part, I think. But it's just a good movie. I just can't get it through my head how this movie in particular won Best Picture. It doesn't like click in my brain for me.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I was going to say really quick before we, I think, move off of what Timo was going to say is I think that a lot of conversation is a little bit obscured by the way the film portrays what it portrays.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure that really is the strength of the film, and I'm not even sure that's really at the core of why the relationship between Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman is so interesting. And for me, I actually wasn't really bothered by the quote-unquote problematic aspects of the film, understanding not only when it was made, but when it is set. By contrast, I really fucking hated the way that Joker portrayed mental illness, because that's modern, and that film, I think, had a responsibility to do things that it didn't. I think that, of course, under a modern lens, a lot of things are not going to hold up, and aspects of Rain Man certainly fall under that category. But I think contextualizing it if possible, is important. But again, just like how I bring my own stuff to this film, other people bring stuff that makes that hard to do. But I think to Tanner's point, if you can weave around what the film does, I really think that there is such a potent emotional core at the center of Rain Man, and for me, that's why the film was so affecting, and I think that's probably why it did win Best Picture.
Yeah, so I made this comment nearing the end of the movie as Tanner was sort of, going through his role about how he was surprised that it won Best Picture and kind of titillating on some of the more controversial points about the movie. And to me, this is one of the examples of Best Pictures and the Oscars in general sort of falling into what I personally see as kind of sort of a trope of two unlikely characters go on a journey across the country, and the more hardened one becomes,
Softens up a little bit.
Softens up, yeah. And then they sort of reach an understanding, and then there's a
I felt this movie seemed, especially given its Best Picture winning status, very similar to Green Book.
Yeah. And I think that's where my comparison comes from, yeah. Or Driving Miss Daisy.
Yeah, so it seems, I don't know. For me, that's not exactly a good thing. I kind of felt like the movie is a little bit Oscar bait. It's written and performed and directed for the purpose of winning a Best Picture, winning awards. And now that doesn't disqualify it from being a good film. I think that definitely goes into my thinking about it, especially amongst ranking it against other Best Picture winners.
Yeah, sure. Because this is, of course, our personal ranking, and this is our personal opinions on it. And we can each bring whatever our own perspective is to how we want to rank these movies and how we want to personally analyze them. Because we're not the Academy, and good, glad we're not, because we get to decide on our own. Fuck you, Oscars. But also, I like watching the Oscars.
Yes, me too. Should we just get right into the more the more minutia of this film?
Yes,
because one thing I noticed this is a very minute thing about the writing. I just noticed it. I wondered if anyone else did. So basically, there's several points throughout the film where obviously Dustin Hoffman, what's his character's name? First name? Raymond. Thank you. Oh yeah, Rain Man. Okay, of course. I'm an idiot. He's a high functioning autistic person, and he can he's good with numbers and things of that nature. There's several points through the film where he displays this to Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise seems to be surprised by it every single time, like equally surprised every time. He's like, "Wait, you know the number of toothpicks? You can count the toothpicks. You can count cards. Like, yes, obviously that you've seen this happen before. He's good with numbers. He's done incredible. He memorized
a phone book
of a phone book, and you're surprised that he can. Yeah, you know that he is able to do these things, and yet he's surprised every time. I just felt that was a weakness of the writing, and it seemed like. Overall, the film was just was sort of spinning its wheels a little bit in terms of and waiting for that sort of reveal in the motel about the relationship, the childhood relationship between the two characters.
Yeah.
I want to pose a question to you boys that talks about writing and spinning your wheels. And I think points to one of the weaker aspects of the film for me. What the fuck does Tom Cruise do? And why is that in the movie?
He imports cars and sells them.
So I think it's actually what he does for his job is critical to the setup for the movie. He imports luxury cars and sells them to rich people in LA. But this new deal that he's going to do is getting screwed over by the Environmental Protection Agency because the Lamborghinis he's importing don't meet the requirements. And he's taken out a loan to purchase these expensive cars. The loan is coming due. The EPA is not releasing the cars. He needs money because his buyers want their down payments back. It's very complicated. The long short of it is he needs money. And when he finds out that he's been cut out of the will, he's going to do whatever it takes to get the money back, which means that he's going to kidnap Raymond.
Yeah. I think I think the setup is fine. I just think that it makes the film a little bit too convoluted, and I think there could have been a more elegant way to establish Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise needing money is not complicated to establish.
Yeah.
And I thought that he was a con man at the beginning.
I
'Cause
think
that's
I think he is a con man the whole film.
Yeah.
Because they're in Oklahoma and Raymond's got to watch TV at 3 o'clock. And so instead of like being upfront with the housewife and just like trying to explain the situation as like a maybe a normal person would and appeal to their niceness, he comes up with this scheme about them being Nielsen TV analytics collectors.
yeah.
And it immediately falls apart because it's not right. But it's the thing he thinks of because he's a con man. And he thinks
Yeah.
of going to Vegas because he's a con man. That's who he is as a character. He's the 80s asshole condensed, I
Yeah,
think.
I think. Well, okay, so that would work. That whole thing of him being a con man would work in the film's favor, because like when they're in Oklahoma, he learns that being honesty is the best policy, as we've all learned in kindergarten. Apparently, not Tom Cruise. But then it like that would have worked as a theme and an arc for Tom Cruise if there had been consequences to them counting cards and him exploiting his brother in Las Vegas, but
But there
that didn't
weren't.
happen.
Yeah, he got told to leave and
They kept the money.
and they kept the money.
Like if they didn't get the money, like that would be a consequence of him being a con man, being a liar, and lying to this the casino heads that were questioning him.
Yeah, so I've been stewing on this a while. Listen to all you guys bring up these very excellent points, and I think the point of the writing being weak, and then the backstory of Tom Cruise's character Charlie Babbitt not necessarily being as in the forefront as I kind of wanted it to be. My main problem with this movie and its writing and its pacing and everything is convenience.
Mm.
They just do things because it progresses the movie, not because it fits the writing, not because it fits the characters, and things sort of just feel like they're thrown together. It is such a focus of the movie. Tom Cruise's character's backstory and job at the beginning completely takes a backseat for most of it. He does occasional calls, but you can't really tell what's going on, and it's a little bit convoluted, as Abram said, and the writing that doesn't necessarily fit the characters when certain things come up, like Tanner said. And then you explained his job, Timo, and a lot of that, it goes by so quickly, it's hard to understand. I've seen this movie twice. I think this is a very good movie, and I personally like it a lot. But I do think that it's weaker when it comes to being a Best Picture because it feels either predictable in the ways that we were saying it being Oscar bait, or just takes the easy route and just throws things at the wall. It doesn't feel like it's really planned out in a lot of ways, which is – I'm actually starting to lower my opinion on this movie the more I talk about it. But I mean, hey, that's what this is for. That's what deliberation and conversation is for.
Yeah. Something I thought of, just more evidence of this film being very wheel spinny and how it was written. I think the high points of this film very clearly are the emotional high point of them, the scene between them in the motel, and then the sort of audience pleasing fun high point of them, counting cards in Las Vegas. Everything between that is very forgettable. There's a whole scene in there where Tom Cruise needs to be told again that his brother has autism by some random doctor in some podunk town. Like, why is that in there again? I just don't understand that whole aspect. It feels very they're putting just the same emotional and story beats in there over and over again until they get to those high points.
Something I wanted to raise, because I think you're totally right, is whether or not a film for Best Picture needs to holistically be that Best Picture, or whether it needs to use its various disparate aspects to propel one central idea, or one central feeling, or one central strength. Because I totally agree with the weaknesses that we've brought up, but I also think that the charisma of Tom Cruise, the commitment of Dustin Hoffman, the way they play off of each other, the way they relate, the way that Susanna is thrown in, I think that emotional core makes a lot of those problems seem a lot more inconsequential. So for me, a lot of critiquing film is about, okay, yeah, there are these weaknesses here. I can rip apart even my most favorite films. Like, shout out to fucking Blade Runner behind me. But what a film does and what it puts its energy towards, I think, is most interesting. And I don't know for you guys where you come down on that, but it's a lot easier for me to overlook these other aspects when those performances and that relationship is so compelling.
Yeah.
You know, we got a bunch more stuff to do after we get done with our discussion, so I think we got to wrap it up. But I just want to get in one last thing that for me, Tom Cruise's emotional development arc feels weird and stunted. It seems like he spends most of the movie denying that his brother has autism and fighting against it. And then very rapidly, as soon as he's able to use him for his own benefit in Vegas, does he switch into like really loving his brother with like the dancing scene where he teaches him how to dance. It seems very abrupt to me, unlike in some of these other movies. And like, to me, that's the emotional core of the movie. And so even though like, yeah, I think you're right that the movie does a lot of this emotional stuff well, and I think the portrayal, they obviously did a lot of research on it. It's still that's the one thing that gets me above maybe the other stuff, is that it feels like mistimed. It doesn't feel gradual. It doesn't feel like a true arc to me. It feels like a switch.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one thing I would say is that the scene where he realizes that Raymond is Rain Man, because that came before the Vegas stuff. For me, that's when I think he started to recognize Raymond not just as a burden, but as someone to understand. And for me, the casino scene, I read that almost as a little bit more empowering. Like yes, it was manipulative, but it was also Charlie Babbitt, for as much of a douchebag as he was, empowering his brother to do what he couldn't. And there's certainly the manipulative part there, and that's completely undeniable. But it's partially the filmmaking, but partially it felt a lot more uplifting, and that felt like an element where their relationship was a little bit more in harmony. And he was being watched out for, and he stopped for Ariel, whatever her fucking name was, for taking advantage of his brother. He didn't let that play for a joke. He was being a little bit more protective. He's still a fucking douchebag for making his brother do that for him. But I think in his own way, which is why the nuance of the emotional arcs that these characters have is a little bit more interesting, is that while he was taking advantage of him, he was also finally acknowledging Raymond as a person and as somebody to work with, not somebody to drag by the backpack.
Sure, yeah. And I think when he gets him the suit and starts to, as you said, like empower him to be his own person. I mean, that's really what the crux of the film comes down to, in that one of the last scenes at the end, when the analyst and the person from the institution are trying to gauge how Raymond is feeling and how free he can be. And Charlie has such a confidence in Raymond's ability to take care of himself and make his own decisions, even if it's hard to understand what he's thinking. That really is the emotional core of the movie for me, and actually why I think their performances, which I think both are absolutely fantastic, probably some of my favorites from both of the main actors, work so well, because that at the end of the day, even though I don't necessarily like the progression of it, I do think that that's a pretty interesting story, especially because we don't see that kind of stuff super often. I mean, we get the story format of the two different characters going on the journey and the hard one becoming soft, but the idea of it being through the lens of mental disability and how far someone can push to be their own person while they still have mental disability, I think that's really good. And I'm trying to bring this up because I've been crapping on the movie. I know we've been critiquing it, but at the end of the day, I gave this an 8 out of 10. I think it is a very good movie. It is predictable in places. I'm mostly criticizing it because I don't feel it necessarily belongs as a best picture because of the critiques I've mentioned, but I still really do like a goddamn movie.
It's well made. It's well shot. The set design and all that stuff is really good. It's just like, it's got good solid filmmaking fundamentals. Which allows us to get in there and essentially nitpick story and nitpick writing.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think, like I said up top, the acting is, if you set aside the more problematic aspects, acting pretty good. But I think you can tear some pretty big holes in the story of this film.
Yeah.
So I think it's become time to figure out where this film lies on our gigantic and growing list.
Mm-hmm.
So would you raise your hand if any of you, will start at the bottom, if you would rate it above Godfather Part 2?
Oh.
Yeah, that's just me not liking crime films. I talked to Tanner about this before. I was very fully prepared to be the only one that wanted to put it anywhere higher. In my personal ranking, this would have been Parasite, Rain Man, Godfather 2, Godfather 1. But hey, that's how the way the taco crumbles. But we're
I
gonna.
agree.
I'm in the minority, but I said my piece.
Okay.
There we go. Okay.
We do have a few minutes left. I just want to do something that I thought of really quickly.
Oh yeah.
The 1989 Best Picture nominees sucked. By the way, the other four were Working Girl, The Accidental Tourist, Mississippi Burning, and Dangerous Liaisons. When was the last time any of us talked about any of those films? Now let me go over some of the films that were not nominated and are far more beloved now. My Neighbor Totoro came out that year, as did Akira, Grave of Fireflies, Cinema Paradiso, and The Biggest Crime in my eyes, Die Hard, was not nominated for Best Picture in 1989.
So it was a weird year, which is
Yes.
why we get to watch it now today.
Yeah.
And talk about it. So let's take a look at our graph to see it move. Ooh, there it goes. Number 4 on our list.
Number 4.
It
That's
feels
fine.
good.
That's
Feels
fine.
good.
I don't know if it feels good. Number 4. Whatever. It feels.
It feels.
It feels.
It feels,
Okay.
man.
And now for the moment you've all been waiting for.
Okay. Ooh, let me open my letterbox.
Oh dear, he wasn't.
You've got
you
the
weren't
list.
prepared.
Sorry.
Oh dear.
Well,
I'm
it's
usually
just building
on this.
suspense.
Yeah,
I like
you're
a
right.
little bit. I like a little bit more suspense.
All right, give me a number.
Oh,
So we've got 88 options, correct?
Correct. I need to find my list. Where the fuck?
Okay.
Oh, I got it.
88 options?
Yeah. Let me see. I think I have to remove.
Tension is rising.
Yeah, I know. I have to
It's gonna happen.
remove.
also, Twins, starring Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh
came
no,
out
I
that year.
already did remove it. Okay. All right, we're good.
88?
All right.
Correct? I just want to make sure I don't accidentally spin one that isn't and invalidate our spinning,
Yeah.
Okay. I'm clicking the spin wheel.
Yeah.
It's going.
Dear. Oh dear, here we go.
Whoa! It went crazy there for a second. Whoa. Number 33.
Oh,
Okay.
That's
All right.
That's either recent or.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I know very little about this movie.
Hmm.
1985. We're sticking around the same era.
Mhm.
Okay.
Directed by Sidney Pollack, Robert Redford, Meryl Streep. Out of Africa.
Out of Africa.
Africa.
That's the one I've been joking about for so many weeks, and we're actually gonna watch it. Holy shit!
I know nothing about this movie. I'm excited to
I
see.
don't
I
either.
know
I just know that
nothing.
it's a movie that won Best Picture, and no one talks about it.
Never heard of it. I'm gonna look
I
it up right now.
honestly have never heard of it. So we were on the crime bender. Now we're on the 80s bender.
Oh yes. Oh, yes.
Holy shit! 161 minutes.
Oh my god. Well, I said I wanted the film I hadn't seen before, and I got
This is the
bit in
price
the
you pay.
ass.
Got a hot 69 on Metacritic.
Ooh.
Let's-
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
We will
There
have
we go.
we will have fire for our debate next time on
I
the
agree.
quest for the bestest. Stick around. We'll be here next week to discuss
Out of
Out
Africa.
of Africa.
Yes.
Madagascar 4.
My
Madagascar 4 out of Africa.
Out of Africa. Okay. We'll see y'all then. Peace.
Bye.
Oh.
It's all
Mirror
good.
my video.
I got it.
All
Okay,
right.
ready? We're gonna go and hey guys,
Hello,
welcome back.
shotties.
And as
God
So-
damn it!
I wasn't sure what the protocol was. I know someone
Okay, can we just restart the whole